So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology, and let's do a 2-month review on the iPhone 17, which is probably going to be a pretty hot ticket for this holiday season coming up here in a few weeks. I do believe that this is probably the best iPhone most people can put under their tree this holiday season. Let me talk to you about why. So I went with the mist green color. It doesn't come with a charger in the box, just a USB-C to USB-C cable. At least that cable is braided for the iPhone 17. But the deal is that, you know, the boxes are smaller now, so that's something there. Let's start by talking about the price of this phone and why it's a tremendous value in my honest assessment. Now, the price of this one comes in at the same price as the iPhone 16 came in at $799. Now, keep in mind, that is when you're doing a carrier upgrade there. If you do get this phone unlocked, it's actually $829. With tax, it's like over $900, but it's still kind of the same exact pricing structure as the iPhone 16. But having this extra storage space has been glorious for this phone. We do have ourselves 256 gigabytes. We also do have ourselves 8 gigabytes of RAM, and the most important feature to me, which is the 120 hertz. Why is that a big deal? Well, because the ProMotion display tends to make this phone run just like a Pro iPhone, and so most folks won't even be able to notice the difference anymore. The real difference noticed is in the cameras on the rear, but these cameras on the rear are also already pretty fantastic, so that's also probably not a big deal breaker to most people either. So pure price to value, getting a really good battery life, reduced bezels over the 16, 120 hertz panel, making this thing super smooth on the day-to-day usage. This device has been glorious to use. Also, for those of you who don't like the camera plateaus on the Pros, you also will like this cleaner, more minimal look. I personally like it because I think it just feels very nice and clean and simple, and I also do like the vertical camera array. I think that looks very nice. It just goes straight down, kind of flows with the curve of the phone right there. On the right side of the device, I've enjoyed the camera control since the 16, so having that here also kind of makes us feel like you're not really that behind a Pro, because that could have been a Pro-only feature, but thankfully Apple put it here on the iPhone 17 as well. The power button is pretty large, and the 6.3-inch size actually fits in the hand very nicely. Now, if we go ahead and turn this over to the left, you'll also see action button remains on here and volume rockers. Funny enough, the iPhone 17 actually allows the Apple logo to be right in the center, unlike the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max. So that if you care about that clean aesthetic, I do think you'll like this one a little bit more. It's also 8mm thick, so it's not an ultra thin phone like, you know, your Galaxy S25 Edge, your iPhone Air of the world. Those devices do feel substantially thinner, but it is at least an IP68 dust tight and water resistant phone. So that's pretty much what we're used to with these iPhones for many, many years. At the end of the day, this phone actually feels like a pretty durable piece. The whole back is glass. While it does feel like kind of like a matte frosted texture, the device can still crack. If you do hit it on the right angle, the glass could crack. So I do still recommend a case for this phone. But let's move on to the area a couple months later that I've been enjoying the most, and that is the display. And I think it's why a lot of you will too. Now, this actually has the same display as the iPhone 16 Pro, basically. Now, this gets a little bit brighter than that phone as well at 3000 nits. So this phone is actually easy to see outdoors, but it's also a very, very nice display to scroll as well. So I do really like this size factor as well, 6.3. It kind of feels like it is the smallest of the newer iPhones. It feels a lot easier to manage on the day-to-day, and it feels just right with iOS. I don't feel like with this size I really need split screen multitasking, and so it kind of feels like iOS was more designed for this smaller display. So it's been very, very enjoyable. And I think for those of you out there who want a balance between size, good battery, and also comfort, the 17 is right there. But the Air, if you're looking for the lightest and the easiest to hold in terms of the weight, the lightest to hold, that's obviously the Air. But this one kind of has that perfect sweet spot balance of kind of like there's just nothing really to complain about too much. It does have the dynamic island though. So if you're looking for Apple to reduce dynamic island or get rid of it altogether, you'll probably want to skip out the iPhone 17. But other than that, and some people actually might want that if they're coming from an older iPhone and never got to experience Dynamic Island. That's not likely a deal breaker for a lot of people. They'll probably still enjoy this iPhone 17 very much so. Now, when it comes to the performance of this phone, we did speed tests already, and what happens is this phone just gives you essentially pro-like performance on a phone that is the base model. Because it does have an Apple A19 chipset that is going to be of a 3nm architecture, and it does have 5-core graphics on board. While it's not 6-core GPU, it's not the Pro chip. It doesn't really seem to matter because it doesn't seem to lag or bog up on pretty much anything I'm doing. While it's not going to produce the highest benchmark scores in the world, it doesn't really stop you from playing games. It doesn't stop you from enjoying your day-to-day usage. It doesn't get too warm. Honestly, it does get warmer than the Pros, but it doesn't get too warm. So when you are using this phone, you're probably not going to have too much complaints. If it does get warm, it tends to get warm up in this area right here, but it doesn't get like so warm that it's uncomfortable. So a very efficient phone, even for the base level model. Again, though, if you are a gamer, I would substantially recommend going to the Pro. It is much better for thermals. But this one is not uncomfortably warm in pretty much most scenarios anyway. But if you do push the game, you'll feel it more on here than a Pro. So software wise, we are looking at iOS 26 on here, and I do have the clear tinted icons. The tinted icons actually got lighter within 26. In addition to that, liquid glass has been definitely kind of a nice experience overall. It is a lot different though. So if you're not used to it, it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. But they did add quite a few features in here, but at its core, it still has the categories of applications over here. Where you edit the widgets and add things. The way you navigate this home screen is kind of the same. So I think most iOS users are still not gonna have a hard time using iOS 26. It's not like it's some really hard software to learn if you've already been using iOS for a while. It's not a big deal, but it definitely adds like a fresh paint job on board. Things bounce a little bit more. They're a little bit more clear, and they match up a little bit more translucent, and they match up well with the Mac OS, the iPad OS. So Apple staying true to its nature and giving you a very cohesive, in sync system that goes along with the other products, and it's no different here. The cool thing about the 17 though is that you can get the best of iOS at a lower price than the Pros and still run it at the same kind of like experience with nearly the same exact performance. So this is why I say it's not like you're getting an iPhone SE or 16E, excuse me, where the phone is kind of like an older body. Yes, it runs iOS, but it has that older body and feel. Not with this one. This one has that fresh feel. So 2 months later, when it comes to the cameras, again, I enjoy camera control mostly over these past couple of months with the iPhone 17 for just kind of being this. Oh, we're actually getting a lag there. So again, not perfect. I'm going to leave that in the video just to show you that iOS is not perfect, even though it might seem like I'm making it seem that way. It's not. It can glitch sometimes here and there, but you'll see 2x zoom. It can go 10x, and this is enough for most people. When the iPhone 10 launched, everybody wanted an iPhone 10. A lot of people got an iPhone 10, and the iPhone 10 had 10x zoom. This still has 10x zoom, but it has 2x that crops in on that main 48 megapixel and gives you a really sharp 2x photo. Unlike the Air, this also has the useful ultra wide angle, and you do have the ability to zoom like that if you'd like. Liquid glass actually has made, in the iOS 26, has made the camera a little bit different. Some people forgot that you can actually go like this. Some people don't even know you can do this to navigate through. So I think that could confuse a few users who don't know how to get to their other modes. You kind of just got to hold down and swipe through. You can see it kind of going through like glass, but you get cinematic, slow-mo, and more. Now, if I click up over here, let's go to photo. If I click over here, it's going to pop up these other options here: flash, styles, aspect ratios. And when I see stuff like aspect ratio on a base model phone, and then I see things like 4K at 60 over here on a base model phone, I'm just like, I can do mostly what a pro user would probably want anyway on this base phone. And then you have the camera control. So if you do place this on a tripod, you could actually get almost the same type of work done on here as a pro phone. Of course, you don't got the raw modes and stuff like that, but a lot of the times you don't even need them. So let me go ahead and flip over here to the front and talk about the ultra wide camera here on the front. The center stage camera has been a true game changer for all the 17s, and this one is no different on the base 17. So great camera on the front, great upgrade to 18 megapixels, and on the rear also very strong. So 17, couple months later, you could probably hear it in my voice, I'm pretty ecstatic about the packaging of this phone. It's been pretty superb. So when we talk about battery, I've raved before about the iPhone 16 Pro, which was my previous daily driver before upgrading to 17 Pro Max. I was on the 16 Pro Max, went to the 16 Pro, came back to the Max on the 17 Pro Max, but over here, this phone still has a USB-C Type 2.0, so it's not the best with a Type C. It is a DisplayPort though, but when it comes to charging, it's not super fast, but what it does have is very good battery life because it's a 3692 across a smaller screen, very efficient CPU and RAM. This phone right here gives you a pretty superb battery life. We're talking not quite as good as the Pros, but it's not way behind either. Like, it's a pretty much an all-day phone, and it also gets pretty loud with its speakers at 27, like around 27, 28 decibels. So it's also pretty loud there. The connectivity is strong on here as well. Qualcomm modems on board, Bluetooth 6.0. We're not looking at Wi-Fi 7. Actually, we are looking at Wi-Fi 7. I mean, there's no 6E on here, but there is Wi-Fi 7. So that's better anyway. That's like the latest Wi-Fi 7. And so you do have most of the connectivity things you need on here. Face ID has been on here as well. This does have emergency SOS, texting via satellite. I mean, it's got like 6 years of software support. You see what I'm talking about? Almost everything I mentioned here almost feels like I'm talking about a Pro phone without having the Pro price tag. So a couple months later, is there any cons? You might be wondering, Nick, bro, you're kind of like just giving this thing nothing but praise. Well, here's the cons. The cons are the phone kind of still looks like the 16, so they didn't really give you a brand new design. Whether that's a con to you depends on whether or not you upgraded to 16. You probably are going to feel a little bit burned if you got a 16 or a 15 even, because now they have the 120 hertz, which you probably wanted on the previous versions. That, to me, the design wasn't drastically changed. So that could be a little bit of a con to some people. The second con is, yes, it does have good battery at 3692 milliamp hour size, but they probably could have made this a little thicker and went like a 4000 milliamp and made this thing even more superb on battery. Also, I think the Pros could have been at 16 gigs of RAM and this could have been at 12 already, just based on what I'm seeing. Like with the RAM, like most competitors already have more RAM anyway. And you might be saying, well, you don't really need that much. Not now, but you know, with AI and all that stuff going on, and you know, 5 years down the line, 8 gigs of RAM probably still going to function just fine, but it's not going to feel as powerful once your phone gets loaded up with a bunch of apps, a bunch of photos, you're multitasking. You might run into a little bit of choppiness, maybe like 5 years down the line on this phone. So that's just something they can improve. 12 gigs of RAM on the base, 16 on the Pro series, kind of like what they did with the MacBooks. They went to 16 gigs of RAM on those devices. They could do that on the Pros. And this phone could get a bigger battery in the future, probably reduce dynamic island, change the look a little bit, because it is kind of still similar to the past two iPhones that came out. And then we have, this is getting really near perfection, honestly, quite is. So that's my take on the 17 2 months later. If you're thinking about getting for a gift, I think it's probably one of the best iPhone picks for a gift this holiday season, especially if that person you're gifting this for is not going to be a Pro user, like actually using the triple camera setups. This is just a sweet offering. So let me know your thoughts on the 17 a couple months later. Are you still interested? Are you like already past interest on this one? Because I still think it's going to go into 26 as a really solid competitor here, going up against the Galaxy S26. So stay tuned for that. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And by the way, I forgot to mention, you can get this in black, white, mist blue, this sage, or a lavender color, or lavender, however you want to go ahead and mention that. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.